Have you had a lifelong dream in owning your own business? Allow Stephanie Quarles at Natara Marketing to help you with all of your marketing needs. Natara specializes in modern logo design, website development, app development, social media marketing presence, and search engine optimization. Natara's team has a passion, skill set, and experience in digital services to help them guide you through your web development journey. They have happy clients as well. Owner of In-State Business Solutions, LLC, Cameron Shaw said, "Keep doing what you're doing. My experience with you and your team has been great." Contact Stephanie and Natara at 866-752-8461 or email services@nataramarketing.com. Enough looking at impressions. Let's impress the world. Frustrated with your pain? Team Rehabilitation of Kokomo, Indiana can help you find the solution. We give free injury screens. Call to schedule yours today at 765-416-6630. We're located at 613 West Lincoln Road, just west of the South End Post Office. Hello, everyone. This is J.C. Barnett, 1032 Podcast, Conversations with J.C. and Tav. I'm really excited today to have a special guest with us, Miss Lisa Washington. I'll allow her to introduce herself more here in just a moment. But first, I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Stephanie Quarles with Natara Marketing. I want to thank Dwayne Ewing, who's a longtime friend with Team Rehabilitation, Physical Therapy. So as we get into the warm-up here, I think it's vitally important to gain an understanding of what our health looks like, what our health looks like in the place that we live. And we live in Kokomo, Indiana, which is within Howard County. And then what that looks like within the state of Indiana and in the nation. So I'm going to kind of pass it off to Lisa here. Okay. She'll introduce herself more, and we'll get right into the meat of things.
Thank you. My name is Lisa Washington. I am a registered nurse by trade. I have been a nurse for about 30 years. I have lived in Indiana for about 24 years. My husband's been here, I think, for about 29 years. But I currently serve as the executive director for Minority Health Alliance of Howard County. And in that role, I am tasked with doing educational programs to decrease health disparities in our county. And as I said, we do that with educational programs. We also do health screens, intervention programs, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. And so some of those, and I should say that all those programs that we do those free of charge. I actually work for an agency called Indiana Minority Health Coalition. There are 22 of those coalitions throughout the state. We cover the very north of Indiana, the very southern portion of Indiana, and out to the east and out to the west. But I am going to talk a little bit about, we do a lot of chronic disease management. And so JC asked me to come after I think I had spoken at a board meeting that he was at. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time on is diabetes. If you know, well, I'm going to tell you a few things about diabetes.
Yeah. Well, and if I may, for a moment, and one of the reasons why it impacted me so greatly is because, at least on one side of my family, I know as far as medical history, there's an extensive history there of diabetes.
Yes.
I knew of my grandmother. When she passed away, she was 87. She did a tremendous job of taking care of herself in that time, and I believe that's the reason she was able to live such a full life. But there are a number of people who don't take it as seriously.
Right.
They don't look at the initial signs. They don't take the steps to keep themselves in good shape, pre-diabetic and full-blown diabetic. So I really wanted you to come and speak about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's something important to talk about. So when we talk about how many people in this country that are impacted diabetes, the numbers are pretty astounding. And I think when I go and talk to groups, I say to them, how many people do you think in this country are impacted by diabetes? And I say, we live in a country of about 330 million people. How many people do you think are diabetic?
Yeah.
And I hear all kinds of numbers. And I update my slides when I do the presentations. Just a few years ago, it was 27 million people. That number has increased. Wow. It's about anywhere from 35 to 37 million people who are actually diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic. Now, one of the things that healthcare providers are really concerned about are the number of pre-diabetics. And those pre-diabetics, those are the people who have a blood sugar or an A1C. And an A1C is that number that the doctors, you get a blood test. It's called a hemoglobin A1C, and what it does is it looks at what your blood sugars are running on average for about the last 2 to 3 months. And when I first became a nurse 30 years ago, I like to say 3 years ago because that means I will be going back to my 20s, but I'm not going back to my 20s. It's looking at what your blood sugars were for 3 months. Over the last 3 months, that gives that healthcare provider a snapshot into what your blood sugars truly are. It used to be 30 years ago, what healthcare providers went on is what your fasting glucose was. And that was a number sometimes, that is a number that you can really eat pretty well to get a fasting glucose. And the doctor really does it, or the healthcare provider, nurse practitioner, PA, you can eat really well for 2 days and kind of trick that number. Yeah. Hemoglobin A1C, can't trick that number. But as you said with your grandmother, it's good because they truly know how well controlled you are. And that really lets them know, what do we need to do to make you as healthy as you can be? So we start to think about diet. Mm-hmm. Can we help this person with their diet? Some people, depending on what their hemoglobin A1C is, we can just make some dietary changes. Doctor doesn't need to put you on a pill, doesn't need to think about insulin or any of the other injectables. Sometimes we need to think about exercise. American Heart Association, American Diabetic Association recommend that everyone, if possible, exercises 150 minutes. It's not a day. It is a week. Yeah. And I think one of the things that Kokomo has done a really good job at is we now have a lot of trails that people can exercise on. We've got a lot of facilities. We have the Y. We've got, and I don't want to single out any one gym, but we've got several gyms that you can do. Also, we have we have YouTube. You have all kinds of things that you can do. Now, I always tell people when they come to see me that you need to check with your healthcare provider to make sure that whatever exercise you're doing, that you can do that in terms of if you have any joint restrictions.
Yeah, you don't want to hurt yourself any further. Heart, we don't want you to overstress if you have any heart conditions. So we talk about diet and exercise. If I may.
Yeah.
And one of the most impactful things about what you're saying in there is that more times it starts with you taking that step. And there's more things that you can do to help yourself versus running immediately to the doctor.
Right.
Right? And Travis, something that I wanted to ask you, share a little bit about my history of my grandmother, and extensive diabetes on that side of the family, my mother's side of the family. Not so much that I'm aware of on my dad's. Do you have any history in your family?
Yeah, I have some history of heart problems and things like that, but most of all, my family has been pretty active. And you know, when you're 20 and 30, you feel invincible, and especially if you play sports, you kind of eat whatever you want. And as I started getting older, I started realizing that everything I put into my body affects me.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yes.
The sleep I get affects me. The exercise I get affects me. And similar to a farmer that's planting 9 months before the harvest, you know, we do need to take ownership and look at what we put in our bodies. And, you know, just for example, if you look at a Monster drink, it says you shouldn't drink for a pregnant woman. Well,
Right.
I'm thinking, if a pregnant woman shouldn't drink it, then why would I?
Yeah.
Like, if it's bad for their kid, then that
Make it
means
make
it's bad
sense.
for anyone,
Right.
which means it's bad for me. And whether it's pop or fast food, there's just certain things that we try to pass on to Bridges, because I think people can get lost in the numbers, or they can think that's not going to happen to me. But the reality is your health is an everyday decision, and what you do now is completely going to affect the next decade and the decade after that.
Yeah,
Right.
that's very, very true. And one of the things that I walked out of that meeting the other day with was a wheel.
Yeah.
And it had the dietary information on it.
Right.
Love for you to share some of that.
Yeah, so when we talk about diet, and I tell people, so I should say a little bit about the program that I teach is called DEEP, and it's from the University of Chicago. And in that, we teach people, we try to catch people when they are pre-diabetic. If they're diabetic, we also do this. And I tell people, even if you're not pre-diabetic, even, you know, just normal, your numbers look normal, we should start carb counting and knowing just what Travis said. What are we putting into our body? We should be eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because as we, even young kids, even we should start forming those healthy eating habits. We should be eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner along with 2 healthy snacks. And when we look at a plate, I tell people, look at your plate that you're eating out of, cut it into fourths. And in those fourths, on 2 of those fourths, should have what we call low carb, low starches. And those are your dark leafy vegetables. And sometimes, you know, we say we have those finance kids who don't like, and even adults, you know, I can remember going to college and, you know, they tell your parents, your kids are, you know, they're going to be in the dorm and they're going to have foods they never had before. And that is true. But we need to learn to start liking things like those dark leafy vegetables. Unless, you know, sometimes we have people who are on certain medications like Coumadin or some kind of medicines where they can't have those and they have to watch their vitamin K. But for the most part, you know, those are things like salads, but you should have, and those, especially if you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, those are going to be the things that are going to have the least effect on your blood sugar. So for like your grandmother, or if you had somebody in your family that was a diabetic, so if we think about what are those things that are going to have the least effect on our blood sugar, on that other half of that plate, you're going to have those in one section. Those are going to be where you can have the carbs, and there are some carbs that you can have. And if I didn't say it, we're looking at you having 45, if you're a woman, we say about 45 carbs. If you're a man, you can have 60, because unfortunately most men have more muscle mass than women, with the exception of, maybe there are some women that are more athletic and just have a little bit more muscle mass. And that other section, that's your protein. Proteins are things, obviously, your meats. And for meats, when we prepare meats, we should bake, broil, or grill. The way that we kind of make our proteins a little more unhealthy, we add carbs to them, is when we do the sauces, when we deep fry. But for the most part, those are not going to have very many carbs. So most of the time when I work with people in those dietary, and I'm not a dietitian, I'm a nurse, so I always qualify that with people. But I do ask them at the one session, I want you, the next time you come to see me, I want you to write down for 2 or 3 days what you're eating. I want to see what you're eating, and that makes people a lot more conscious. And even after I started teaching this like 6 or 7 years ago, I became a lot more conscious of what I was buying in the grocery store. There were things I had to set back because, and frozen foods are a good example of this, because a lot of us are on a hectic schedule, and we pick up things and we don't realize what they have in them. So a lot of like those frozen TV dinners, they have a lot of carbs and they have a lot of salt. So salt is the other thing that we have to be very cognizant of. There is a sheet that I give them. We shouldn't have more than about 1,500 milligrams of salt, and that includes what you're taking in. So you can't add more. Like a half a teaspoon of salt is about all you should have. And if you're a diabetic, you really have to be careful of that.
Ramen noodle eaters, I have to watch it myself. I love ramen noodles. I'm looking at the back of that packet right now in my mind. That's a lot of salt.
It's a lot of salt.
In just that one
Just
soup.
the one, yeah.
Travis, I know that you shared earlier some concerns about how we placed as far as Howard County in the state of Indiana, where we ranked in terms of health. Could you share a little bit of those concerns, and then Lisa, could you follow him up with exactly what that looks like?
Yeah, working with youth, we're always looking at trends, and I just remember reading a snapshot on Indiana Health, and Howard County was ranked 86 out of 92 counties in overall health, and that included childhood obesity and mortality rates and heart disease. It was a large encompassing number, and so then you're thinking, well, 86 out of 92, I mean, that is at the very, very bottom of the barrel. And then when you look at Indiana, well, are we a very healthy state? Well, we're 35 out of 50. So we're in the back third, and then our county's in the back 10. When you start thinking about this, we care so much about so many things. And yet, I don't think we're taking health care serious enough to be like, some of this is like diabetes, some of this is absolutely preventable. And if we continue to drink pop at every meal and eat potato chips and fried foods and pre-packaged and highly processed things, we can't just keep doing that and then think, well, there's a pill I can take that will fix me at the end of the day. No, you are wreaking havoc on your body. So, Lisa, I would love to hear. There's so many good things, but do you have like 2 or 3 things that Howard County citizens could do, very practical, very simple, but right away to say, let's change the narrative of health in our county?
Yes. So obviously most of this just has to do with education and outreach. We've talked about the fact that, we have done some things with, I'll say, here's one thing that we did, I think that was excellent. We got a smoking ordinance passed, and that was huge. It took quite some time to get that done. So, a lot of times, almost every time, I'm doing the DEEP program. So we know that there is a very huge link. Diabetes just doesn't affect your pancreas. Diabetes affects, we know that there can be a link vascularly. So what happens with smoking is when someone smokes, it vasoconstricts your arteries. So it raises your blood pressure, and it has this whole vascular effect. So it affects your heart, and I've got my little props here. So it has effect on. I think everybody can see this. So here's your kidney. So your kidney has all kinds of vascularity to it.
A lot going on in there.
And so, your healthcare provider is going to be watching your blood pressure very closely. And the reason for that is because of the vessel disease. And so one of the reasons I say watch your sodium, sodium is another thing. So if you're a smoker and you got high blood pressure, your doctor, those things about education, that's one of the things that we are going to educate you on. And so, if you're, one of the reasons we really wanted that smoking ordinance is we wanted people to, we educate people on what are some of the things that can happen. So it's important that, if you're a diabetic or you're pre-diabetic, that you understand why what smoking does to your body. So that's one practical thing that we can do.
I imagine vaping is just as bad.
Vaping is just, and the thing about vaping is we don't know what's in. We don't know the products that are in there. And so, I can remember when we did that, when we were getting that ordinance passed, some of the things, some of the products that are in there, like some of them actually have a byproduct of antifreeze. So, that's one of the things that, as you said, you want to know what you're putting in your body. And, when you, again, it's an informed decision that you make if you want to vape, but understand what it is you're putting into your body. And, I have been a nurse for probably 20 years when I got involved. There's a lot of committees that I sit on, and one of them is the tobacco committee. And I knew what secondhand smoke was. Third-hand smoke, I was like, what is third-hand smoke? I didn't even know what third-hand smoke was. And so they explained to me, that's what's left on the walls and curtains. And and so for moms who, we haven't really talked a lot about infant mortality, but that's one of the things when we talk about what's another practical thing we can do, because we have Indiana we are not where we want to be with infant mortality. Our numbers are still high in infant mortality. So what's another practical thing we can do? We can educate our moms and families on what are some of the things they can do, because that's a preventable thing that we can do to bring infant mortality numbers down, is educate them on smoking. So third-hand smoke.
And if I may, and as a dad, one of the more precious moments in my life is holding my small babies in my hands and holding them and taking care of them and looking at them and knowing that I want to help, as long as they're a baby, preserve their life as long as possible and protect them in that way. But that starts with me taking care of myself too. And so that was a powerful thing that we were talking about off camera, was in order for me to take care of this small baby, I have to do the things to take care of myself first. So.
And and our slogan when we had the program at FSA, because we actually had a mother-baby program, our slogan was for every baby born in Howard County to celebrate their first birthday and beyond. And so that's another preventable thing that we can do. Exercise is another one. American Heart Association says 150 minutes of exercise. And you don't actually even, we give them things, we give them chair exercises. You don't have to go out of your house. If you have things that prevent you from, I don't want anybody to go outside, and fall or trip. I mean, you can sit in a chair and do exercises. Right. So those are things that you can do. Other things that you can do is make sure you understand the medications that your physician or healthcare provider has given you and follow those prescriptions. Make sure you're taking them at the correct time every day. If you're on insulin, insulin is one that's very important. Make sure you're taking them timely. And if you have to take them, if you have a short acting and you have to eat, make sure you're doing that. Record your blood sugar numbers so that your physician or your healthcare provider can track those numbers and see if there are trends. So those are some things that we can do. I'll tell you the other thing that has happened when we talk a little bit about insulin is we have, during the pandemic, what we knew happened with insulin is we had people who could not afford their insulin, and they were rationing their insulin. One thing that has happened on the national stage is the Biden administration did get coverage for people with Medicare to get their insulin with a copay. So, diabetes can be a devastating illness. I had my little foot here, so we talk about when I was a nurse, I took care of a lot of people who had to have amputations. And so that requires this whole track of making sure you're taking your medicines, making sure you're eating correctly, and not having to worry about whether you can afford your insulin or not. So that's, did I answer?
Yeah.
Okay. No, absolutely. Okay. And one of the things that is near and dear to me, of course, as an African American, a black man in this community, I want people who look like me and us to know that they can go see the doctor.
Right.
Pursue health care. Get some of these things figured out so that you can be and live well.
Right.
Is there anything in a very short time, is there anything that you can clarify for people in our community? So
as African Americans, I think one of the things, and as a male, black African American males suffer from hypertension more probably than most other groups. My husband went to college with one of the guys who was a best man. He had hypertension as an 18-year-old, ended up on kidney dialysis and a transplant. So we call hypertension the silent killer. There are lots of ways that if you don't have insurance, that take advantage of some of these health screens that are available. Know your numbers. That's probably one of the most important things that I can say to someone. So take advantage of some of these health screens. We have lots of agencies, nonprofits that can help you out.
Wonderful. Travis, I think we got a wealth of knowledge today. I think not only will I go back home with this and try to change some things as far as my diet. I know that I'm a little bit overweight myself right now, but I do stay active. I am conscious of drinking water and some of the things that I eat, but I think that I could do better myself personally.
8 glasses of water a day. I didn't get that in.
8 glasses of water a day. Everybody, I hope that you have heard these things and that you will take them seriously, take your health seriously, and do better for yourselves, not only yourselves, but your children. Travis, I think this was a great conversation with Lisa. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I think if you don't know what to do, then just take the next right step. and regardless if that's a little bit more sleep, a little bit more water, a little less salt, a little less that, just take that step. If you walk to the mailbox, then maybe walk to the next mailbox the next time. So that's all it takes.
And you can contact me if you would like me to come and speak for you, or if you would like to see me for diabetes, 765-252-3818.
Awesome. Everyone, this was a wonderful conversation today. This is 1032 Podcast, Conversations with JC and Taff. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for having me.